with the lecture. This is again inclusion bodies, and this is a human hand. And this guy was working with goats. So what do you think he got? Anybody in here from Tuskegee that worked with the goat farm? What did they have out there about 4 or 5 years ago? An outbreak of? It's called ORF. Everybody heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's transmissible to people. So that's what it looks like in a person. What's the common name for that in sheep and goats? Called lip and leg ulcers. Anyway, here's another one. This is a pox virus. And which pox do you think it is based on what you see over here? Yes, monkeypox. Okay? And the difference between pox viruses and what they actually do depends on whether or not they can, what they call internalize. And that means they can infect internal organs. Usually what happens is they get in through a break in the skin. They go into the lymphatics and then into the circulation, and they go back to the skin. And in many instances, that's all they do. But they can actually spread to other organs as well. Can you think of an example of one that can cause devastation like that because it can spread to other organs? Probably most of you don't even have any idea what that is. Well, if you look on my left arm, I have a little scar. What was that from? Smallpox vaccination. Most of you never even had that. Why? It's because it's eradicated. Is it eradicated? Probably not. As a matter of fact, there are some strains of this stuff that are pretty deadly that are still present in laboratories. And guess what laboratories, or who has them? We have them. And who else has them? Who is the arch enemy, or was the arch enemy of the U.S.?
Russia?
Russia. They have them too. And what is the fear from both the U.S. and Russia? That somebody will get them that has no conscience at all and release them on people. And guess what's going to happen? I'll still be around for my old self. You guys have never seen a smallpox vaccine. So who's very susceptible? You are. The vast majority of the population of the world. But anyway, human smallpox can do that. Monkeypox can also internalize. This is what we mean by that. Look at the organ here. You can see the damage to the lung. And this is, of course, on the skin and in the mouth. And that's what it looks like histologically as it's damaging tissue. Here's just a picture of the virus itself. But this is what I really want you to pay attention to. What are these things in the cytoplasm? They're inclusion bodies. DNA viruses, what are the inclusions? Except pox. RNA viruses, intracytoplasm. Okay? Now here's another one. And this is tying monkeypox through a situation that happened, it was back in the 80s that this occurred. This is a giant Gambian rat. And they are actually fairly friendly. And they make decent pets. What happened was, some of these, well, they carried the monkeypox virus. Some of these guys were imported to pet stores in the Midwest. And also, these little guys, if you get them early enough, can be good pets. What's that? That's a prairie dog. And prairie dogs were housed in close contact with these guys. And you know what happened? It went from one to the other one. And people bought prairie dogs as pets, and they got it. So, here's a case. Here we have a kitty cat. He's 15 months old, domestic short hair, abandoned. Uh-oh, what does that mean? What's he gonna get? Is he gonna get food, water? Is he gonna get the nice protection of air conditioning and all that stuff? No, he's gonna be out on his own for a bit. And when that happens, what happens to his stress level? It goes way up, and then what happens to him as far as his nutrition is concerned? Now, this is a cat that's been kept in a house all of the time. So, what's he going to do to eat? Does he know how to catch mice? Does he? No, he's not very good at any of that kind of stuff. So, he's sitting there starving. And what is he going to do to try and survive?
Mobilize fat.
Mobilize fat, okay? So, as he's doing that, he's going to cause some other problems as well. So let's look here and see what we see. What about all of these red cell values? They're low. Except for this one. Why not?
They're larger than normal.
Mean corpuscular volume means what? The size of the cell. What happens to your bone marrow when it's trying to respond? It puts out what it's got. And it puts out younger cells. Are younger cells bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
They're bigger. That's why that's large. Okay? But if you look at the hemoglobin concentration in them, it's low. So, let's look down here and see what else we see. What about here? Yeah, why are they low?
Stress.
Yeah. Now this is probably a chronic stress. So what you see mainly is the low lymphocyte count, and you really don't see the neutrophilia occurring in this case. So that's why you see that. Now, let's see, what else do we have? And eosinophils, that's 0, so that really doesn't mean anything. That's really about it for here. Let's go over here and look and see what we have as far as our chemistry is. Total protein. Now we said this guy was not eating very well. So why is his total protein high? If I got the cat's skin and pinched it, it would do that and stay up. So what's wrong with the cat? He's dehydrated. So that's what makes that seem high. So what does that mean as far as these values are concerned? They're even worse. Okay? So let's look down here and see what else we see. What about BUN? Does that mean he has kidney failure? Probably not. This is probably pre-renal, which means that you're not putting enough blood through the kidney for him to really clear the BUN. It doesn't mean that the kidney itself can't work. It just means that you can't get enough through there to do what it needs to do. So that's a dehydration effect as well. And let's look at bilirubin. Its total is high, and this is mostly due to direct acting bilirubin. Now, what's the difference between direct and indirect? Evidently, you guys don't know anything about that, maybe never had it. But anyway, what happens is, when red cells are broken down, what you're trying to do is conserve everything you can. So they recycle the iron, and the porphyrin is also recycled. So what happens to that? Well, that's attached to a protein. Where does this take place anyway? Where does most of this take place? Red cell breakdown. Normal red cell breakdown. Your red cells don't live forever. So where do they go? To the spleen. And that's where this process takes place. And in the spleen, once you get out the hemoglobin part, well actually the heme and the globin are separated from each other too. The heme part actually gets a protein bound to it, and it gets shipped to the liver. In the liver conjugates it so that it can excrete it in the bile. Now, if you have a liver that is swollen, why would the liver be swollen? You had the answer down there in the beginning once. What would happen to this animal? He'd mobilize fat. So why would the liver be swollen? He mobilized fat to the liver. Now, as the liver is metabolizing the fat, these cells are bigger than they normally would be, so the liver really cannot excrete the conjugated bilirubin. Why not? As these cells get bigger, they swell, and what do they block? Bile cannuliculi. Okay. What's the other name for where the hepatocytes join to the bile cannuliculi? The space of what? This. Kind of so. The space of the say. Okay. But anyway. So if that's blocked, then they can't excrete it. And that's why it elevates you. So we have indications that we have blood problems and liver problems. And let's take a look at the blood. And we see this kind of stuff. What do you think? What is it? Well, that's called a Howell-Jolly body. And what that is a nuclear remnant. As cells are maturating to become circulating red blood cells, I'll just start out. Does it have a nucleus in the beginning? The stem cells in the bone marrow, do they have a nucleus? Yeah. But as they develop and maturate, the nucleus actually disappears. Now, if this animal is kicking out every kind of cell it has to try to make up for not having enough normal functioning red cells, he's going to put out some that still have some of these nuclear fragments in them. And that's what these things are. They're Howell-Jolly bodies. Now, if we look around carefully, let's see if I can find a really good. Those are really good Howell-Jolly bodies, but what I'm looking for is one other thing. A little bit too big. That's one there. Note that one is a lot smaller than most of the others. Anybody got any idea what that might be? The what?
Do you want to know what that term is called when they're smaller?
No. What that little black thing is? No, what is not black, but dark blue.
I can't see.
I think he's pointing to that dog.
Right there.
Is it basophilic?
Yeah, notice these. These are all big. That's not big. So what's that? It's not an inclusion body. Actually, it's an organism.
Microplasma hemophilus.
Microplasma hemophilus. Now, why do you think that's there? Did we say this cat was normal or that he was really highly stressed? He's highly stressed. What about his immune competence now? Is that really good or low?
No.
It's low. So, what's going to happen to stuff that normally wouldn't have done anything? Because his immune system would have kept it in check. Now it's starting to come out. So, part of his anemia is just purely nutritional because he's not taking in what he needs to manufacture red cells. And another part of it is because he's licensed some of them. Because hemobart, that's the old name, mycoplasma hemophilus, is causing some damage to red cells too. Normally speaking, he wouldn't even know he had this. Okay? So, what does his liver actually look like? Here it is. And what is this in the cytoplasm? These vacuoles.
Is it that?
That's fat. And now what that was is an impression spear. What you do is when you take a biopsy, you get a small section of liver, a small little piece of liver, and what usually happens is that they touch a slide to that fresh piece of liver. That gives them a smear that they can stain and look at it. So that's what you were doing here. Now, the rest of the liver, the whole piece of liver, now it's tiny, but that whole piece of liver is actually fixed and goes through the routine processing to get histologic sections. Now these are histologic sections of a biopsy of the liver, and here you can see them. Now, can I be absolutely certain that that's fat?
No.
No. What would I have to do? Stain. With? Yeah. Some of those other Sudan, like Sudan 4 and like that. Okay. So what is it? What does this cat have? He had fatty liver. And that is due to his nutritional status. So does this happen in other animals? Certainly, it does. It can happen in horses, particularly. If you look at various species, common domestic species we know about, the two that have the most problem as far as handling fat in the liver are horses and cats. Okay. So that's intracellular. So now we're going to look at extracellular accumulations. And as we spoke about with the intracellular ones, these are things that accumulate outside the cell, and well, actually some of them accumulate inside, because calcium will be in both places. These are associated with adaptive states or cell injury of some type, or cell death. And that's just to show you that, again, these things will occur either during adaptive states or during injury or even during cell death. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is calcium. And here we have two forms of calcium, dystrophic calcification and metastatic. Dystrophic refers to calcium that deposits in dead tissue, and metastatic is usually associated with hypercalcemia and has other kinds of causes. We'll go through each one of them separately. Dystrophic first. And here is a nice case of a human. And the reason I picked this one is because this is a fairly unusual situation. This is a baby. He's only about 7 or 8 months old. Well, what's he look like? He looks like an old man. This is a premature aging kind of situation that can occur in humans. And when that happens, they get all of the stuff old people get at very young ages. And including calcification of the aorta and the aortic valve, and that's what that is. That's showing you this fish mouth kind of appearance of aortic calcification. And again, calcification in the rest of the vasculature. And you can see it over here on the X-ray and the CT. This is actually in a dog, and this is pointing to the area of mineralization here. And if you look at it with an X-ray, it'll be the pale staining areas like that of the highly electron dense areas like that, where the mineral is. And microscopically, it looks like this little blue area.
Brown?
Mm-hmm.
Could you point where it is on the histologic?
Right there. That's the blue area.
Okay. The blue or
Blue.
brown? Sorry. Okay.
Oops. Yeah, that
Okay,
one.
thank you.
Okay, there. I'm gonna leave it there for half a second so everybody can see it.
It's gone.
Okay.
It disappeared.
What was the other thing I pointed to? What color was that? I thought it
Oh, I
was
see.
blue. I looked at it.
This one?
What was that? The other thing.
Okay.
What color was it?
Brown?
Sort of reddish, orange, brown. Okay. That's red. Red cells. Broken down red cells, actually. And here is a fairly common situation in this breed of dog.